we need? We need it. Well, we sure do. And our scripture reading today came at a time when the people needed some tidings of comfort and joy because they were in a difficult situation. Isaiah was preaching to them. They were sad. They were miserable. They were desperate. But he gave them a great promise, and it's familiar to us today. And this is the time of the year where we are blessed to hear scriptures like this one. Ellie's going to read it to us today. Isaiah 9.
Verses 6 and 7. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of this government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. May God bless the reading of his word.
Amen. Thank you, Ellie. Oh, that's great. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. That's words for celebration. This is a time of celebration, and it's sure portrayed that way. Well, I don't know if you probably weren't flipping through the channels on Friday night, but I was, and I flipped through and I saw the Walt Disney World, I think they called it their holiday celebration, and it was beautiful. They had that castle at Disney World all lit up and these beautiful lights. And the thing that struck me, it always strikes me when I see Disney productions, is how happy everybody is. They are like over the top happy. You know, the only way happy, only the way Disney employees seem to be. I mean, the people there were happy. They were showing the audience there, and they were happy. But of course, they're Disney World. They're on vacation. They're going to be happy, and they looked about that happy. The actors who were like the hosts, they looked happy. But the Disney employees, the dancers, the entertainers behind them, man, they just had that look, that happiness that just more happy than I've ever seen anybody else in my entire life. But that's Disney, and that's great. You don't want a holiday special or a Christmas special that is sad, right? You want one to be happy. It deserves to be happy, and that certainly is what we get from a lot of our advertising, a lot of the media this time of the year, is the joy and the happiness. And we see the commercials, and everybody's happy, and everybody's joyful, and they're together, and they're with family. Boy, that's some of the things I remember most about Christmas growing up, is some of those great old Christmas commercials where the boy comes home from college, and then there's Folgers that's brewing, and everybody wakes up and sees it, and it's so happy and joyful, and we can start thinking that that's the way we're supposed to be this whole time. Like from Thanksgiving, and when that starts, all the way through New Year's and maybe a little bit beyond, we're supposed to just be happy all the time and just be so excited. Because that's sort of the image we're given, is that this is Christmas time, and this is a time of great happiness and joy. Well, I suggest to you that none of us can meet these expectations of happiness. None of us can be happy all the time during Christmas. It's just not possible, nor would it be necessarily good for us. But some of us especially, we recognize that Advent, Christmas, this month of December, this is a time when some light ends up being shined on some pretty dark places in our hearts. I mean, we're reminded of things that are going on in our lives that aren't as they should be, or as we would want them to be in our lives. Things that are going on. And strangely, it can also shine lights on old wounds. That we thought had all healed over and closed, but suddenly we feel their ache. Once again, these wounds from years and years ago, and for some reason, it is this time of the year that brings it to us. We can be reminded now that we have lost somebody because there's an empty seat at the table that was filled just last year, or maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and we're still remembering them and thinking about them. This could be the time of the year when we're thinking and reminded of some ailment, some illness that we have that's maybe keeping us from the joy that we want to have during this time. Maybe there's some relationship that is broken, and we've tried and tried and tried to do something about it and to fix it. We can't do anything. We can't fix it. And we see that during this holiday season, and so much more too we're reminded of all the little luxuries we can't afford. All the bills that we're going to have trouble paying. We're reminded here that we get toward the end of the year that there are a lot of dreams we had for this year that they're not going to be realized. This can be a difficult time of the year for many people, in fact, probably for most people. And here's the problem with that. Because of this image that we have of this time of the year, of December, we think that this puts us outside the Advent celebrations. This puts us outside Advent. Now, I'm not sure where all of this came from, this expectation that Advent, the whole month of December, is supposed to be one unending season of joy, that everything surrounding Christmas is supposed to be happy. I'm not sure where that came from, but I know it didn't come from the Bible, right? It didn't come from the Christmas story. Because you look at the Christmas story, you read the Christmas story, and gosh, you're like, wow, this is dark. This is a dark story. Yes, Christ's birth on Christmas Day was this wonderful thing, but around it, a lot of trouble. Now think about it. Let me highlight a few parts of this story that you may have forgotten. There's an unwed mother. There's a long journey to a distant city, far away from family, far away from help, far away from knowing what to do. There's a birth, not in the inn, because there's no room in the inn, but in a dirty stable. There is, you may have forgotten, a vengeful king. You may have forgotten about the murdered infants, about the narrow escape to Egypt, about the years spent in exile. Christmas was wonderful. It was glorious, and the gospel writers do a great job of highlighting the glory of that birth. But it was surrounded by difficulty and by darkness. We don't see it, just see it there, we see it also in Isaiah. As I said today, these beautiful words were given to the people in the midst of suffering, in the midst of darkness. You don't want to look somewhere else? Look at the stories we love about Christmas. The ones that aren't really scriptural, they're not about first Christmas, but they have these themes in them. What are some of the best Christmas stories? Well, It's a Wonderful Life. A story about a man trying to commit suicide. The story of A Christmas Carol. A story about a man who has descended into such loneliness and such greed, it takes something truly miraculous to pull him out of his darkness. Some of you may remember the story, The Gift of the Magi. And that was about a couple who was suffering terrible poverty. They only had one or two items, treasures that they had between them. Sometimes so many of our very best Christmas stories are stories with difficulty and darkness. You know, some of the best-selling Christmas songs are the darkest ones, because they remind us that this is a part of Christmas. The darkness is a part, and especially a part of our preparing for Christmas. Think about what is the best-selling Christmas song of all time? Somebody knows that. What's that? White Christmas. Lynn always gets the yes, it's White Christmas. White Christmas, they go, oh, well, that's a happy song. No, it's a song about somebody remembering a Christmas from long ago that he's not experiencing. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas just like the ones I used to know. There is longing there. There is loss. Have you ever watched Mimi in St. Louis and seen Judy Garland, heard her sing, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas? That is one of the sad, it sounds like a happy song. But Judy Garland sings it in such a sad way because not all our Christmases are merry little Christmases. We often have troubles in our lives. We often have sadness and difficulty. What's another one? The other Bing Crosby song, Lynn? Christmas song? Yes, Christmas song. I'll Be Home for Christmas. I'm not here. But I am praying that I will be home for Christmas. I always thought about the soldiers that were away at World War II, and they were dreaming of being home for Christmas, and they knew it really wasn't going to happen. They were dreaming about it. They were thinking about, I am going to be home for some Christmas on down the road. They go, okay, well, wait a second. Yes, there is some embracing of darkness. You know, if we feel sad at Christmas time, if Christmas is a difficult time for us, it shouldn't make us feel like we are standing outside of Christmas and outside of the Advent season, especially Advent. You know, Advent was first created by the church. It's not in the Bible. You don't find it anywhere in there saying, you know, thou shalt put forth Advent candles in the tabernacle and light them one each week. That's not there. The word Advent doesn't appear in the Bible. No, the church came up with that a long time ago, 1,000 years ago, and it was come up with the idea originally is that Advent was a time to recognize darkness and waiting. That was the original intent. And so originally during Advent, no Christmas decorations were put up, no hymns, special Christmas hymns were sung, no trees were decorated, none of that. It was a time of darkness and waiting. And then, of course, Christmas would come, and for the next 12 days, we would celebrate. That's not the way we are anymore, is it? Advent, for us, has become sort of a pre-party to Christmas. For us, Advent is the tailgating that goes on before the big game. And we can really feel like we are on the outside if we're not a part of the party, if we're not a part of the happiness. But again, that's not what Advent was all about originally. Gosh, I think there's some value to that. I think it really welcomes a lot more people into the Christmas spirit, into the Advent spirit, into this month if we say, you know, it is okay to be sad. It is okay to feel lost. It is okay to have some fear in your life. It's okay that your house doesn't look just right, or you didn't make all the dishes that you hoped to, or everything's not just perfect. There is an element of darkness too to Advent, and there is a value to that. You know, 100 years ago, well, today, if there is some darkness, if there is some sadness, our response is fix it. Fix it and get over it as soon as you possibly can. But not that long ago, people saw the value of suffering. Yes, nobody wanted to suffer, but when you suffered, you actually built your character. You made yourself into a better person. There was a silver lining around the cloud of suffering. And you know what it was? I think, the big thing? It gave you compassion. How can you ever have true compassion for someone else who is suffering unless you have suffered yourself? That's what a lot of doctors will say. Is they first really understood what it was to be a patient when they actually were a patient. They had to experience the emergency room. They had to be admitted to the hospital. And then they started to understand what that was really like from the other side. Suffering gives us that. And it's a wonderful gift to be given. And we should be able to make sure we understand that, yes, we don't want to suffer. But when that happens, when we lose someone we love, that it's okay to go through that process and go through it at our own rate. We don't have pressure. Get over it. Get through it quickly. Don't be grieving for too long. We grieve, each of us, in different ways. And we need to give ourselves that permission, and we actually need to see the value in that and how that really makes it so that we're living a real life. That is what a real human life is. It contains some suffering. And why is that so important, especially during Advent? After all, couldn't we forget about the suffering and just have the other 11 months? Make these 5-6 weeks, make them all happiness and all joy. And we'll get back to the suffering right after New Year's. Couldn't we do that? Well, if we did, we would be losing something important about this season, this Advent season, and something important about Christmas as well. Because it is from the darkness that we really see the light of Christmas. Let me tell you what the few verses before what Ellie read for us so beautifully a few moments ago, what the few verses before that say. Or these verses that we just read. And then I'll read those again too. Those who walk in deep darkness. Those who walk in darkness, on them a light has shone. Those who live in the land of deep darkness, they have experienced this light as well. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Sometimes it is in the darkness that we truly appreciate the light. We know what light is. We feel its warmth. We understand what it brings to us only from our darkness. I've told before the story of Gerald Coffey. I love this story. It's a beautiful, true story. Gerald Coffey, he was a pilot during the Vietnam War. He was shot down. He was put in the prison camp in Hanoi. He spent 7 years in prison, much of that in solitary confinement. And he wrote a book about his experiences. He came home at the end of the war and wrote this book and talked about one Christmas in particular. It was a Christmas day, Christmas morning, and the guards had given him, and I guess all the other prisoners, a few pieces of chocolate, like Hershey Kisses kind of chocolate. But it wasn't Hershey Kisses. It didn't taste good. It didn't taste really good at all. But it came wrapped in that same kind of silver foil. And he unwrapped it, and he straightened out that foil, and on one side it was bright red and shiny, and on the other side it was silvery and shiny. And he thought, well, he decided he would make something. And so out of the first little wrapper, he made a swan. And then out of the next little wrapper, he made a flower. And he started thinking what he'd make out of the third wrapper when he heard the guards. They were celebrating with their families Christmas, because there were a lot of Christians in Vietnam then and now. And they were out there celebrating Christmas, and he could hear their celebrations, and he could hear a little boy playing with a car or truck on the ground, making that distinctive sound of the car running, and was doing it all day, and that made him think of his children that he hadn't seen in so long, and wondered if they were at home. And were they playing with their toys as well? And suddenly he was overcome with this nostalgia, and this sadness, and this fear that he wouldn't see them again. And in the midst of that, he knew. He knew what to make next. He made out of that last wrapper a silver star. And he said in his book, "My own Star of Bethlehem." How beautiful. And he took a thread from his blanket, and he took some straws from the broom that was in his cell, and he tied each of these little ornaments to the ends of the straw with the thread, and he found a little gap in his cell right above his bed, and he stuck those straws in there so that the 3 ornaments were dangling down there, and he could lie in bed, and he could look up at those 3 little ornaments that he had created. And he wrote that he was overcome by the beauty and the simplicity of his Christmas. There was nothing getting in the way of the message of the birth of Jesus Christ. There was no materialism, there was no commercialism, there was no food, there was no family. It was just him and the Christ child. And he said this in his book. He said, despite the fact I was afraid, despite the fact I was desperate, despite the fact I was hungry and lonely, I had the feeling that this might be the most meaningful Christmas of my life. Sometimes you have to be dwelling in darkness to truly see and truly appreciate the light of Christmas. And what is that light? It is God's love. And in addition to that, it is the hope that God gives us, that Christ gives us through his life, through his ministry, through his death and resurrection. The hope that those that we have lost, they're in God's hands. They are taken care of. The hope that we will see them again. The hope that whatever darkness we are experiencing right now in our lives, Christmas reminds us that that darkness will come to an end. The hope of an abundant life here, and the hope of eternal life to come. Listen. This Advent season, this month of December, I hope it's a wonderful month for you. I hope it's full of all the very best things, but if you do find yourself in a moment of darkness, maybe that's okay too. Because Jesus Christ is the light that shines in the darkness. Your darkness, the world's darkness,